Hello everyone, Gashbad here, and we are finishing up round 3 of our Isle of Valgonda Warhammer Fantasy 8th edition escalation campaign. The scenario of this round is strike hard, strike fast, no mercy. We're up to 700 points, and here is my noble Empire force. In the front we have Captain Kurgi. He is a captain of the Empire with a barded warhorse, full plate armor, a shield, and the Sword of Might. To the right, we have Jeremy Croth. He is a warrior priest with heavy armor and a shield, and he is carrying the Sword of Battle. Behind them, we have the Ruddy Reavers. They are 20 swordsmen with full command. To the right, we have the Angry Mob, which are 20 free company with a standard and musician. To the left in the back, we have the Riding Roughshods. Those are 5 Inner Circle Knights with full command. And in front of them, we have the Jägermark. Those are 10 huntsmen. Here is my opponent's nefarious army, also in the corner, my opponent's nefarious arm. He is using the Demons of Chaos, and his general is a Herald of Slaanesh. That herald has the Sword of Might and the Greater Locus of Swiftness. Herald's bodyguard is a unit of 18 demonettes with the Banner of Swiftness. The demons also brought 3 Fiends of Slaanesh and 2 units of Furies. So the units of Furies are a new addition. They are nicely painted, but they are going to cause me a lot of problems. So you get bonus prestige points, which are the points that you spend in the last multiplayer game at the very end of this campaign, and you also get 25 victory points each time your unit moves past either the halfway point or into the deployment zone before turn 2 or turn 4 respectively. And there's not really a whole lot I got in my army that's going to stop those Furies from doing that. So it's a well-tailored addition to the force, and I'm just going to have to see if I can play around it. Here is the table after everything's all been set up. We have 2 forests up in the demon player's deployment zone, and we have a normal building sort of in the center and off to the right. The demon player has set up with Furies on either flank and the Fiends and the Demonettes in the center. The Herald is in with the Demonettes. I've set up with the Free Company off to the left. No one's in there right now. They're just trying to bust forward and get into my opponent's deployment zone. The Knights are in the center, or center-ish. My Captain is in with them, and the Swordsmen are right to the right of them. Jerem, the Warrior Priest, is in with that unit. Since this is a 700-point game and we're only playing on a 4x4 table, my opponent was able to prevent my huntsmen from deploying anywhere really useful. I couldn't get into the deployment zone, so my choices were either put them back center, kind of out in the open, or put them in the building. Now I went and I put them in the building. Obviously, I would have rather had them in my opponent's deployment zone, but it wasn't going to let me do that. They are a unit of 10, so they're sort of hard to stick into just a little corner somewhere. And sadly, the building is not past the halfway point on the table, so the huntsmen are not gaining the victory points for doing that. Of course, if the building was past the halfway point, I wouldn't be able to set them up there because I would be within 12 inches of the enemy troops. So what I'm saying is I'm not sure it's a great place for them to be, but I didn't have the best options. With all that set up, it's time to roll for the first round of the game, and the demons win the roll, so they get to go first. And this kind of surprises me. The Demonettes and Herald declare a charge on the huntsman in the building. I'm not sure why I didn't expect that. Maybe I thought that he would send the Furies in there instead. Maybe I thought that he wouldn't want to be sidetracked. He'd want to speed those guys as fast as possible towards my swordsman. But for whatever reason, he declared a charge into my huntsman, and I think I made a big mistake because I'm really going to lose those guys really fast. But they do declare a stand and shoot as their reaction, and they do kill 2 of the Demonettes as they pile in. They make their charge reasonably comfortably. They do have the Banner of Swiftness, so they're up to movement 7, so that was not a hard charge. In the remaining moves, the Furies flap forward on the left and right, just trying to skirt around my forces. The Fiends don't want to get charged by my Knights, so they don't move anywhere near as far as they possibly can. The Fiends have a movement of 10, so they can go up to 20 inches if they want, so they can go really fast. But they're playing a little cautiously right now. So in the magic phase, my opponent doesn't have any wizards, but he does have that Reign of Chaos table. Now, I apologize for this. I don't mark down everything that happens in the Reign of Chaos table. Usually, I only record it if something really dramatic happens, like a unit shows up or some of my guys die or something like that. But there's a lot of things on that chart that don't really have any obvious impact on the table. You know, you can have one of the gods attack all the forces, but you don't roll that 1 in 6 chance to get any of them, or it can be the number 7 result where nothing happens, or, a ward save can go up or down, or there can be a demonic possession, but since I don't have any wizards, it doesn't matter. So most of the time, nothing is going to happen. And this is going to be one of those rounds. Nothing happens in the magic phase as far as the Reign of Chaos table goes. This does not excuse how terrible that rule is. I still super hate that rule. I don't like that it's just going to do something dramatic to the tabletop and there's nothing you can do to prevent it or anything like that. So I don't like the rule, and the fact that it doesn't always ruin a game doesn't excuse it. But for the time being, nothing bad happens, and we move on to the hand-to-hand combat phase, where unsurprisingly, the demonettes just go and slaughter all my huntsmen for absolutely no loss, and they move into the building. They have to move into the building because otherwise they're just going to be stuck behind it, and they're not going to be able to get across the table in the time allowed. But it does put those demonettes in kind of an interesting position. They're kind of stuck there for the time being, so maybe I can do something about them. That's definitely the most powerful unit my opponent has, and now that I know exactly where they are, I know they can't charge in the next round, I know they can't march in the next round, that does give me some opportunities. And this is what I decide to do, is the Empire turn, and the swordsman and my warrior priest go and declare a charge against that building. We're going to go fight this giant unit of demonettes with the general of the demonic force in there. I might be crazy, but I think my knights actually went and declared a charge against the fiends. It was a long charge, but this is the third round of the campaign. This is my 6th game with the Empire force, and I haven't successfully charged with those knights once. So I'm feeling a little pressure to get them to actually do something, and I don't really see a downside of me failing the charge. So I think I declare a charge. I don't make it, obviously. They stumble forward a bit, and I move my free company up as well. At this point, I think it's entirely possible that our left-hand forces just pass right by each other. We just sort of, the fiends go around the knights, my free company and the furies just pass right by each other, and we both just move into the opposite section of the table to grab those extra points. I would like a combat. I think my guys stack up pretty well against those forces in front of them, but it's really not up to me because the Slaanesh forces have all the movement in the world to dictate where they fight. So, on to the magic phase, and Jerem McCroth goes and casts Soulfire. Soulfire causes a Strength 5 hit to any undead or demonic forces in base contact with himself. Now, it's unclear about how this actually works when he's in contact with a building. We went and said that it does d6 hits. That's normally what happens when a building gets hit by a template. Now, this isn't a template, so, it's not clear that that's the way this should work. He is in contact with these things, but I mean, it seems unreasonable that he's in contact with like all of the troops in that building. So this is sort of a good compromise solution as to how this should work out. I roll up and I manage to kill off 3 demonettes, which is really nice. More importantly than that, Soulfire also gives the unit flaming attacks, which means that when they're fighting in these building sieges, they get to reroll failed rolls to wound. So now I don't actually have to go and give him the spell that allows him to reroll failed rolls to wound. I can save dice and I can go and try and cast the shield, which gives me a 5-up ward save. My opponent manages to dispel that, but still, that was a good magic phase. So on to the close combat phase. The swordsmen managed to go and pass their fear test, and we make our siege parties for either side. I think it's very likely neither of us go and commit our characters to the fight. Now, for my part, I know that the Herald of Slaanesh can easily kill my warrior priest, and I don't want that, because he's giving that unit leadership, he's giving that unit spells, he's giving that unit hatred, which is really nice in this situation, because the demon player isn't going to be fighting next round. We're not locked in combat, so every turn I go into fight, it's a fresh combat round, so I'm always going to get that hatred. So I don't want to lose that. For his part, and I'm not 100% sure on this, it's possible that Herald fought in this combat, but up to half of my guys can target a character or a champion or something like that. So even though that Herald can inflict a lot of damage with those 4 Strength 5 attacks that reroll fails to hit at a really high weapon skill, the Herald is only Toughness 3 with 2 wounds and a 5-up ward save, and I'm rerolling rolls to hit because of hatred, and I'm rerolling rolls to wound because of Soulfire. And I can tell you, if the Herald went into the combat, I would be targeting it. So I think both our characters sit out the fight. Anyway, my swordsmen go and kill off 3 demonettes, which is not bad, and the demonettes predictably kill off 5 of my swordsmen. Those are acceptable losses. The demons win the combat, my guys get pushed back, but still, I think those guys did pretty well. They're also kind of trapping the demons in that building. They can leave through the exit or something like that, but then I move into the building and we just kind of dance around each other. I like where it's set up. So on to demon turn 2, and we don't pass by each other. The demons want blood, and so the fiends go and charge directly into the knights, and the furies go to support by charging into the flank. They fly, so that's not a problem. Obviously, I don't like getting all these charges. I don't like getting flanked. He's up 2 combat res at the beginning, -1 because of my standards, so it's a little dicey. I think I'm gonna be okay. The Furies are not good in combat. They have a single strength 4 attack at weapon skill 3. The Fiends are a little bit of a different case. I always find that they punch above what their stats suggest. They're pretty moderate as far as that goes. They're monstrous beasts. They have 3 attacks. They're at weapon skill 4, strength 4, they're toughness 4. They got 3 wounds and of course the 5-up demonic save and a rule that reduces anyone in base contact with them. It reduces their weapon skill by 1. But really, that shouldn't make much of a difference. My guys are still strength 4. I've got the captain in there with his strength 5 attacks, to say nothing of a 1+ armor save. I think I'm going to be alright. The magic phase comes and goes, nothing terrible happens in that, and we go on to the hand-to-hand combat phase, and I'm right about being alright, but not exactly as I suspected. Neither of us cause any wounds to each other whatsoever. I fail my fear test, so I just bomb all my rolls. I don't get a single hit through, which is kind of shocking and disappointing and all that kind of thing. But I also don't fail any of my armor saves. So I'm down by 1. I have to pass a 7 or less break test, which I do. So that's okay. But I would have rather, stuck some wounds on these guys. But for now, I'll take it. And I forgot to mention the further moves, so my opponent's Furies actually just flapped into my deployment zone to pick up all those points. They're fine. The Herald and the Demonettes actually decided to stay in the building. So it's my turn, and yeah, it worked out last time. I'm going to try the exact same thing again. The Warrior Priest and the Swordsman are going to go and charge into that building again. We're going to see if we can't drive those guys out over the course of the game. The Free Company reform in order to help out the Knights. Now, the reason for this is because I am so close to the Furies. They could get close to me because they were charging, but I'm just making a normal move, so I'm a little bit more restricted. I'm going to reform. I have to end up an inch away from those Furies. I reform on my center point, so I have to go into this really long line to make sure it's a legal maneuver. Also, by reforming into a really long line like this, I cross the center line, and so I can pick myself up 25 victory points and 1 prestige point. So now I'm set up in this weird formation. If this combat is still here, by the time my next turn rolls around, those guys can charge into those Furies and help those Knights out. Moving on to the magic phase, Jerem again hits the Soulfire and burns away 4 Demonettes in the building. So that's really good news. Now the Demonettes are down to just 6 models plus the Herald. The Herald has to go into the combat. Again, Shield of Faith is dispelled, and we move on to the hand-to-hand combat phase. In the hand-to-hand combat phase, the Herald and the Demonettes go and kill off 6 of my Swordsmen, but the Swordsmen go and strike back, again rerolling misses, rerolling failed to wound rolls, and they kill off the Herald of Slaanesh. There goes my opponent's general, so yeah, great job, human infantry. Weird thing about this combat is that I set up the 10 guys that I was going to send into the combat, into the building to fight. I chose 10 basic swordsmen. 6 of them got killed, which meant that now I had to send in the warrior priest. But since my opponent had already attacked, he sailed through with no damage. No one could target him. So he did get to add some of that combat potential to the whole melee. And so, yeah, great result as far as I'm concerned. I still lose the combat and get pushed back. I don't have many swordsmen left, but I have more or less annihilated that unit. But on the left flank, things do not go as well. I fail my fear test on those knights again. That's 8 or less because that captain is there, but what can you do? And we go and we strike and we kill a single fury. They're weapon skill 3, toughness 3 with a 5-up ward. They're not hard to kill. I do only have 1 guy in the warhorse attacking into him, but the fact that I haven't put any wounds on those fiends is disappointing. But part of the reason is because a bunch of my knights are dead. The fiends and the furies attack, and I managed to fail 2 of my armor saves, 2 of my 2+ armor saves, and 2 of my knights die. So again, I lose the combat by 1, but this time I break. Nice job, Captain Kurgi and the flower of the chivalry of the Empire. Anyway, I run away from the Furies because there's more of them, and I get run down. The Free Company, on the other hand, they know how to pass a leadership test. They are not panicked by the whole situation, but the fact that all this happened in my turn, and now my opponent gets his turn, means that I'm in a really bad situation. So it is turn 3 and both our generals are dead. The demon player goes and declares a charge onto the swordsman with the fiends in the flank, and the furies, which had moved into my deployment zone last round, they charge the swordsman in the rear. The demonettes go and leave the building off to the right, and the other unit of furies just flaps their way into my deployment zone to pick up even more victory points. As a side note, this is actually kind of what I like about the way that Warhammer Fantasy works. Anyone wandering by the table can go and take a look at that and say, well, those swordsmen are in a really bad place, they're probably going to die, and you'd be absolutely right. Warhammer Fantasy doesn't really matter about combos or cards that you play that can affect things. I mean, there are spells. That does make a big difference when you get into the buffs and all that kind of stuff. But generally speaking, the situation that you see on the table is the situation that exists. I don't want to sound like a grumpy old gamer or anything, but recently there seems to be this push of making miniature games kind of like card games. It's all about finding combos and synergies with the troops, and if they're in this position, they're doing great, and if they're in this position, then they're doing terrible. I'd rather just see the models. I'd rather the focus be on the models and where they are determining how well or poorly you're doing. In this case, by the way, I'm doing very poorly. Nothing weird happens in the Reign of Chaos phase, and there's no shooting phase, so we go to the hand-to-hand combat portion. The swordsmen actually do okay. They pass their fear test and they manage to kill off 2 of the furies behind them, which is more than the knights ever accomplished. They don't do anything to the fiends, and for their troubles, 6 of them get killed by the demons. So Jerem and the boys lost by a gigantic pile. I need double ones to stay. It'd be nice. I wouldn't mind it, but it doesn't happen. They flee away from the fiends. The fiends decide to restrain pursuit and just reform. The furies go and chase down my poor swordsman. And yeah, those guys are dead, and that is my corner of the table, and it is full of demons. Well, the Free Company watched all that happen and decided, yep, better get ourselves into a combat formation. They just reform, and that's the end of my turn. It's Demon turn 4, and they go set about ruining the world. The Demonettes march into my deployment zone to pick up those victory points. The unit of Furies that helped eat my Knights also goes into the deployment zone into the flank of my Swordsmen to pick up their victory points. And the Fiends make an interesting wheel, touch into my deployment zone, they pick up more points, and are pointed at my last remaining unit. The last unit of Furies flaps over on the other side of the house, and I think we know how this battle is going to go. But you never know, sometimes those peasants can amaze. My turn, and the peasants go for glory. We're going to declare a very long charge into those fiends. Who knows? If I make this charge, I might be able to stomp through and regain a little bit of honor in this whole thing, but it wasn't to be. That was a tall order. They don't make the charge range, and they just stumble forward a short distance and see if my opponent is going to end this game with a giant combat or if he's simply going to hang around and collect victory. Nope, not this time. The demons are out for blood. The fiends charge the front of the Free Company, the Furies charge the flank. Nothing weird happens in the Reign of Chaos phase. We go on to hand-to-hand combat, and there's a bunch of dead humans. Again, it needs to be pointed out, the Free Company managed to pass their fear test and do a lot better than the Knights. They kill off 1 of the Furies and finally plant 2 wounds on those fiends. The bad news is that the demons kill off 9 of my Free Company, but I still do have enough bodies in the units to be steadfast. But their bravery has limits. I don't make the 7 or less steadfast roll. The Free Company break. They are chased down by the Fiends and the Furies, and that is it for the game. I have been wiped from the table by round 5. So that was an interesting game, actually. Although I got just smoked, I don't feel bad about how my guys performed. I really liked the combat that the Swordsman and the Warrior Priest had with the Pride of the Slaaneshi Force. They did real well for themselves. The Herald is gone at least. I didn't, score 0 victory points. I think I was going to be in a tough spot if my opponent just avoided me. I think he could have claimed enough victory points to just mess me up all on his own, but he went in with that combat. He still got a bunch of victory points on turn 2 for crossing the center line, but really those Knights disappointed. It was dicey, we were gonna win or lose those combats by a small number. I liked my odds, but it just didn't come up for me. And Captain Kirgi and the Knights, again, just kinda didn't pull their weight. They collapsed at all the wrong times and went all the wrong direction, and that was just the end from there. That said, this round as a whole didn't go badly for me. I got prestige points for having my forces painted. I got a fair number of prestige points for moving into deployment zones, for being the aggressor in these scenarios. And this is kind of an interesting thing, to me at least. If someone was to tell you that someone was running a campaign and they had Tomb Kings, Empire, and Demons, this is exactly the result that you would think. There'd be a round, the Empire would be the Tomb Kings, the Demons would beat the Empire, and as it turned out, when the Tomb Kings and the Demons fought, the Demons beat the Tomb Kings. But this is actually the first round that this has happened. The Demons have not won every game. The Tomb Kings have not lost every game, although as far as our scores go, I think it does kind of work out. The Demons are in the lead, the Empire is second, and the Tomb Kings are third. None of these battles have been a foregone conclusion, and I think that's great. So anyway, we're moving on to round 4, so stay tuned for that. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, leave them below, and I will see you on the next one.